we really need to be in there first, spraying, having nice clear areas like you said, and being able to get it all done, get it all cleaned, and then other trades can follow in behind us.
Welcome to Fireproof, the Passive Fire podcast, where we delve into the world of passive fire protection. Join the PROFINISH team as we dig into the issues we see on site and in our industry every day, and find out how you can save time, money, and headaches on major construction projects. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Russell Watford, the General Manager and Partner of PROFINISH Fire Protection, and today I've got Jono Conway Stewart with me. And thanks for joining me, mate. We're going to go a little bit off the cuff here today, and I've sort of roped you in last minute. So thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's good to be here. This will be very interesting.
It'll be good. It'll be really good. I think, you've got a lot of knowledge that you've built up over the years. You've worked with PROFINISH in this industry for a while. So we're going to try and extract some of that knowledge today and look at how that might be a benefit to some of our clients.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. So maybe just kick us off with a little bit of a background. You've come from a trade and you've been, I suppose, working in construction for a little while. You've had experience in passive fire protection and then sort of lead into your current role. So just want to give us a quick overview.
Yep. So straight out of school, I went into a cabinet making apprenticeship.
Yep.
Did that for 6.5 years, became fully qualified. And then my previous boss ended his business, and I am good friends with Jai, the director, one of the directors, and started working on the tools with him. Did fire spraying for about 3 years, and then applied for a job in the office, and have slowly made my way into the office as a project manager now. Yeah, so which is good.
It was something that you were always looking to do, is sort of like what was the next sort of step in your career path. And I suppose since coming into the office or even in the field, like you've had exposure to spray, but you've also worked in board and a little bit across penetrations as well. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Mostly across board and spray.
Yep.
A little bit in penetrations, but not a hell of a lot.
Yep. And what sort of projects are you delivering at the moment?
So working on CBD South Metro Tunnel and CBD North Metro Tunnel, 2 of the Microsoft projects as well, the data centres, and a whole range of schools, warehouses, everything like that. And
you're mainly delivering, I suppose, vermiculite or spray or duct protection, I think,
correct,
at the moment?
Yeah, so everything at the moment is either fire wrap, duct work, or protecting steel.
Yep. So in our previous podcast, I talked to a couple of our guys in the sales team, and we were talking a lot about the design phase of the project and the various stages throughout a project where we can become involved. You're all the delivery side.
Correct.
So if you think about the 3 pillars of passive fire, there's sort of design, build, and document. There's sort of the three areas that we talk about with our clients. You're really sort of in build and then into document. And if you could just maybe give us an overview of when you get handed over a project. So a project gets awarded to us, it's going to be handed over to you. What's the process that you go through during the handover? And then how do you sort of get started?
Yeah, so the sales team hand over the project to us. We sort of run through the whole project, the markups, everything that's required, the FRL, everything like that, how much material is required for each job.
Yep.
They hand it to us, and then we make contact with the client. We work out start dates and stuff like that. It sort of can be a little bit tricky at times because passive fire can be an afterthought. Yeah. And a lot of the building can be well underway, and we sort of have to come in and do the best that we can to protect what we can.
Yep.
As we're going through.
So you build that relationship with the client, or you get in touch with the client. There'll normally be a site visit involved just to make sure that there's access to our work and that sort of thing. And you've sort of touched on, the fact that it can be difficult at times depending on what's happening on site or where the project's at. So what are some of the common issues that you're sort of coming into when you're picking up a project?
Probably the biggest one would be just that lack of understanding of how sort of important it is with builders. It's sort of their main focus is getting everyone else in first, because the plumbers, the electricians and everything like that, and then we become an afterthought, whereas we should really be in on a project the second either the duct's in or the steel's installed.
Yep.
But a lot of time a building surveyor might not pass it through, and it becomes sort of like, oh, we're halfway through a build, this actually needs to be fire protected.
Right, okay.
And then that's when things start to become a bit more complicated. And
Sure. The other thing I think you touched on was that there's just a general busyness on site. Like it's not that the builder maybe has a preference for one trade over another. It's just that they just want to get the whole thing done.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, correct. And I think especially with vermiculite, it doesn't exactly progress the building on.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's
the plumbers putting their pipes in, the electricians running their cables. That's what helps, I guess, move the project forward in the eyes of the builders.
Yeah.
So we often get forgotten about in the build of the project.
And I guess we also need to have access to areas because if it is spray, and that's one of the main products that you're installing, it can be messy, or we need to barricade off areas. So we really need a clear run.
Yeah, we really need to be in there first, spraying, having nice clear areas like you said, and being able to get it all done, get it all cleaned, and then other trades can follow in behind us.
Yeah, and that ultimately saves time and hassle for the builder.
Yes, it does. In the short run, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But over the long run, it does by a hell of a lot. There's no overspray on other people's work and everything like that.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose if we do come into an area where services are being run and everything is more or less finished, the masking up requirement then becomes quite extensive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doubles or triples easily.
Yeah,
because a lot of cables in buildings can't have any marks or overspray on them because it will damage the cables. So everything will have to get masked up.
And that's obviously a huge labour cost. Is that what you're talking about? It doubles or triples the time?
Yeah, correct. And labour cost and everything.
Yeah.
It just turns into a bit of a nightmare and sort of slows it down from when originally we could be there at the start, spray, clean, and then everyone else follow in behind us.
Yep. That's probably one of the key variations that pops up is if for whatever reason we've had delayed access, it becomes more and more complicated to actually do the install or have access to the steel. What are some other variations that sort of pop up that you see? Maybe have a think about a steel example and maybe a duct example.
I can't hear myself at all. Probably one of the main things is with variations. With variations, there's a lot of the time people, other trades with their lack of knowledge, scrape off our product on duct work, on steel as well. One of the big ones is when the walls get installed, the carpenters usually scrape off our vermiculite off the bottom of the beams so they can fix their top track too.
Yep.
Which obviously voids our certificates. So
it's
something that comes up pretty much on all projects that hasn't been allowed for in planning.
Yep.
So we offer a whole range of different things, whether that's boarding the underside of the beams or changing it from vermiculite to board instead.
It's amazing how often that's overlooked, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's just about every project that we're on where there's walls getting built. It's happening.
Wow. And I think, we weren't going to talk too much about design during this podcast, but it just speaks to the fact that someone hasn't looked at the requirements during the design phase.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Is there any kind of examples that come to mind with duct or wrapping or anything like that, or other examples with steel?
The biggest ones for duct would be when we're wrapping the duct work and giving clearance of ducts.
Right.
Yeah, one of our biggest issues is pipes running underneath that are only 30 mil away from the duct, and our spray on duct work varies from 40 mil now to 53 mil.
Yep.
And then, the wrapping as well, that's 3 layers coming out of a penetration, so it's 150 mil thick. So if we're not in there first, the plumbers will just come and run all their pipes, the electricians will run all their cables, and we won't be able to wrap the duct.
Yeah. So what happens in that scenario?
It turns into a nightmare with the plumbers and the electricians and the builder because
someone's got to rerun work
and someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's where it makes it really hard to try and get variations and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that is a difficult situation. And I think, people don't realise that they're doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
they're all just making progress.
Absolutely.
They're all just getting the job done. So what is it? You said 150 mil clearance around a duct penetration.
Yeah. Depending on the type of product, but the wrap's at least 50 mil thick, and in some instances you have to wrap the duct 3 times to get your required fire rating.
Yeah, right.
So it adds up quickly.
Yeah, wow. So I guess moving on from the delivery side, you're also involved in seeing that project through to completion, which will be, we'll make a final claim, but it's also the documentation. So we've sort of talked about, you mentioned before that you wouldn't be able to certify a column that had the vermiculite, a beam that had the vermiculite scraped off it. Talk to me about just that QA process, maybe that certification process and ultimately a handover to a client.
Yeah, so the guys on site, when they're spraying, they have little measuring tapes.
Yep.
And as they're spraying, they check the thickness that is required that it come off the plans, and they then at the end of each day they document that and they send it through to us on the computers.
Yep.
And then we go and make sure that it's all compliant, and then at the end of the project they do one final check over of all thicknesses, make sure it's all correct, and then we then put that into a document with our markups, and then we also get our suppliers to sign the certificate. We give a little certificate to the builder to say what's been done, the FRLs that have been achieved, how we've achieved them, and then we send that through to them as a final documentation.
Yeah, and that's a key part because a building surveyor is going to need that. Yeah, a builder's going to need that to gain occupancy. Yeah. And I think just with the QA process as well, there's photographs too. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the guys, once they spray an area, they go through and take about 10 to 15 photos of beams, and they send it through to me. They have their measuring sticks that give the actual thickness of it. Yep. And then with that, then we compile it all up into a document and then send it all through.
I mean, sometimes it looks like a messy product, but it has to be over thickness, doesn't it? Or it has to meet the thickness required to get the FRL for that size of steel. Yeah.
So we have a minimum requirement. The guys are usually within 4 to 5 mil of that. If they're under, they respray it. Yep. And we go from there.
So it is pretty precise.
It is. Yeah.
That's good. I guess we'll wrap up shortly. Do you have any advice for a builder or a project manager who's going to be coming to us to get vermiculite or duct wrapping or something spec'd on their project?
I think one of the biggest things is getting us in as early as possible. The less trades that are in, the less people that are working around us, the easier it is for us to do our job. It might delay by a day or two your project, but with variations that come at the end, if we come in after the plumbers, it just doesn't compare.
Yeah, okay.
It's a real no-brainer to get us in first, and then everyone can build around us.
So you're talking that's purely around structural rating?
Yeah.
Yep, fire rating of the structural steel.
And duct work as well.
Yep.
It just makes everything and everyone's life a lot easier. If we're in first and we can get out, we're not spraying around other people. We're not dealing with pipes and everything.
Yep. I know that's a ideal scenario for us, but why is that? How does it benefit the builder? How does that save them time, money, and headaches?
It gives them a clean run because once we're in, they don't need to worry about pipes getting built in certain spots because they can't be done. It can't be done once we've sprayed it. It'll be easier for the plumber to build around it instead of being unknowing where the fire spray is going to go. Yep. They just put their pipe in 20 mil below a duct. Then we've got to spray 40 mil thick. Well, the pipe has to get moved. Yep. So it just makes everything a hell of a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, is there anything else that sort of comes to mind around advice, closing out projects?
Probably more the planning of it as well. Like I said before, the variations in walls and everything. If we are able to have all of the plans, the wall plans from the get-go, we can sort of notify that. But sometimes we only get the structural drawings. We just go off that, we spray it, and then they come in and say, oh, no, the walls have to go up and get fixed into the steel.
Yep.
And then it sort of becomes another variation and slows down the process again.
Yep. So I think, we've I've already mentioned that I had a podcast recently with two people that work as passive fire consultants. So they're in our sales team. And that's the whole aim that we're going for, is trying to educate the market on how we can help with the design process and what are some of the key design considerations to look out for during a commercial construction project. So, I mean, essentially, if we get the design part right, then that shouldn't be an issue later on.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that I'm finding on site is that our industry is still a very much unknown industry for everyone else.
Yep.
Obviously, we have a very good understanding of it, but for other trades, it's very much in the dark.
Yep.
And they're not across everything, same as builders. And that's where these little issues start to arise as the buildings
That's
get
right.
built.
And I guess you wouldn't necessarily expect other trades to be across it, but I think it's important that we just help them understand what might impact them, because the last thing a plumber wants is a variation issue to them where they're going to have to move a service that they've already run. It's time and cost to them.
Yeah.
And as I say, that's the last thing anybody wants on site is having to redo work.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, look, I think we might wrap it up there, mate. It's been good. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat, and I'm hoping that if there's people out there in our industry that are building projects and they're looking at vermiculite, there might just be a few key things that they can take away from this today. And, hopefully some of your clients might have a listen to this too, mate.
Sounds good.
Get to know you a little bit more as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, all right. Thanks for your time, mate.
Cheers. Thank you.